Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under public hearings is ordinance 2016-07, which is R3 lot size. And we will turn this over to Mr. Pryor to give us an overview.
Yes, brief presentation. This is ordinance 2016-07 R3 lot size. So really it's a request to, in the R3 zoning code, to clarify our regulations for single-family attached dwellings. So really this ordinance does two things. It lists single-family attached as a specific use with a conditional use permit. We'll get to kind of the background of that here in a second. And it sets minimum lot sizes and frontage standards. So really, again, just bringing to language what sort of is already, basically practiced today. So the background in, I believe it was 2001 with the Myrtle Street townhomes that went in. We had a couple of uses then that were added into our zoning code, single-family attached and two-family dwellings. Two-family dwelling is basically a duplex, so 2 units, 1 lot. Single-family attached, you will see an image here in a second, 2 separate lots with the units attached to each other, basically. We had those listed out very specifically in R4. It clearly lists kind of what are the minimum lot sizes, what is the frontage going to be, but that was not included in R3 when those uses were added. And so really the bold font application, which we've been looking at for a few months, and we'll look at it here again tonight, is the first request for this kind of two-family dwelling use in R3. And so we'll just camp out on this image here a second, but this is really what's showing you what's on the right, the two-family dwelling, 10,000 square feet. That's what we have specifications for now in our zoning ordinance. And if we look at our comprehensive plan goals for single-family ownership and larger lots and diversity of housing, you almost think of a two-family dwelling being more, I guess, obtrusive to that goal because it's going to lend itself to being more renter and a 10,000 square foot lot. Whereas you get the same number of units with a single family attached, but it's 1 unit, 1 lot, so you have a better opportunity at least for home ownership. You also, at the end of it, you get the same number of units, but you have another 2,000 square feet of lot that's actually there. So although it's 2 lots, it's actually less dense because the lots that you're creating are really 12,000 unit, blocks instead of 10,000 square foot. So if the two-family dwelling, the square foot with the conditional use permit is permitted, you could see where a single family attached is actually in better meeting with our town goals of, when you get to home ownership, larger lot, other types of things, diversity of housing. And so that's where in your packet we kind of list out some of these different policies about ownership and variety. And really we had updated all our commercial zoning pre-comprehensive plan, and then we've kind of jumped on that ship for a little bit. But when that ship is rest ashore here soon, I'm going to take the ship, idea through. We'll get back into our residential zoning. And so this is probably something we would have definitely gone through and clarified in updating that. And so the recommendation is really to clarify what's permitted today. I think when this application was first received, we were using our interpretation of some of the townhome standards and how that's applied in R4 and what's not and what is written there to apply it to R3. But this really gives us a strong kind of legal basis for permitting the 6,000 square foot lots. We talked about the differences and similarities between the two. We really see, when you get to R3 and R4, as far as lot size go, it's not different. Your single-family detached, single-family attached, and two-family are all the same size. The only thing with R4 is that it actually permits townhomes. And so that's kind of the delineation line between the two zones. And so with this clarification of our zoning code, it really kind of continues, it actually enhances our goals of home ownership and those other policies we talked about. So with that, staff's ready to recommend approval of ordinance 2016-07, which is really just a kind of a cleanup and a clarification of what exists today. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody, before we open the public hearing, have questions for staff?
So that would roughly be a lot density of about 1/4 of an acre per unit, or is that even smaller?
Yeah, what's the math in my head of?
0.22 or so, I think, is what I just did roughly.
Yep, so that's where we're at.
Okay. We'll open the public hearing for ordinance 2016-07. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to come forward and speak for or against? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. We'll bring it back to the commissioners for discussion. You want to go first?
I think it's, I only had one small, I think it's a wise text change, or
Okay.
change. Except the 37.5-foot minimum lot width.
Yeah.
That's pretty small. Where'd that come from?
That came from really what's existing in R4 today, and I think if you look in, and let me try to find the page number here where we want to go to. But 37.5 and 37.5 is 75 feet?
Yeah.
Yes. And I believe 75 feet is the frontage requirement for single-family detached. And
For
R3?
I think you're page 64.
Yeah, page 64, that's the page I was looking for, Luann. Yeah, so if you go to page 64, I think the idea of a home with 75 feet of frontage, I guess in developing the idea that you needed 75 feet in the front was an ideal, I guess, for the town, for this type of housing.
I don't think there's any relationship between the size of a lot for a semi-detached house and the single family. I mean, I think you got to figure out what's a nice
Sure.
size. If you get a reasonable width house, 20, 25 feet, you have got a teeny tiny side yard.
So if you have a 24-foot house, your side yard's about 13 and a half feet.
And it's calling
And
for...
so if you have two units together, you have 27
Well,
feet
that's-
between the two units.
Right.
Could you
And-
put your photo
that-
up there when you were,
Yeah, the ordinance is saying a 10-foot side yard setback, so
So it'd be
if it were to
20.
adjoin another one, you'd have a total of 20 feet in between the two properties, correct?
Yeah, and the zoning code is basically
At
set
minimum.
up where single-family detached homes have the smallest amount of frontage requirement, and as you add more homes, you actually make it wider. And so that keeps, I think that's to kind of instill this pacing of a single-family detached look to the town, and not just have a big row of like townhomes upon townhomes with no side yard setbacks. And kind of reading into how the numbers were set up, not knowing that, I guess, again, that's one of those things, if we're looking at updating our residential regulations, these are questions that we want to look through and know on kind of what are the design thoughts basically and how this code was set up.
But in our minds, this is a preferable solution to a row of townhomes.
Correct, in the sense of, not wanting to reduce your side yard or whatever setbacks to where it's just a bunch of housing that's kind of together.
So if somebody built a 37.5-foot wide lot, and they're allowed to have 6,000 feet, it'd be 160 feet deep.
Yeah, is that the math?
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
arithmetic.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a provision for off-street parking for all this too, correct?
Yeah.
Of course, this is the minimum, but it seems just small.
It's narrow.
What? Narrow, that's what I mean.
But for an in-town unit, that's fairly common.
Best plan.
When you get below 20 feet, you start to have a kind of unworkable plan. 20 feet width.
this is bordering right on there.
What's the minimum side yard, 10 feet?
Yeah, I'm bringing that up right now. So here we're looking at R3, which is this category right here. And as you can see, your side yard is a minimum of 10 feet in R3.
Where does that exist in town?
Where does R3 exist?
Is there
Park, Linden Street, that kind of like, it's really east of where kind of North Macon Terrace and that development is. A lot of Berkeley Town is zoned R3.
Lance and Bridle.
Lance and Bridle, R3.
Oh.
I think those are R3.
How wide are the lots in Lance and Bridle?
I think some of those might be 60 feet, the smaller ones.
Some
I walked through there today. I think
75.
there's
60 to 75, and I think
5
we
feet to half.
at the most, yeah.
Because they have some smaller lots and then larger lots on the inside.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
So and I had asked this question before, and you did say it, but I need an additional clarification. If this were recommended, R3 and R4 would be ultimately the same
same for single-family homes and for basically duplexes or single-family attached,
Okay,
which they're the same today for single-family homes and for two-family.
okay, so Myrtle Street townhouses are R4?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, when you do townhomes in
because
the
they're in a row, yeah,
well, when you do townhomes at all in the town of Ashland, you need to be R4
okay.
or R5.
The other advantage is the fact that you actually theoretically have a property line going down the center of the house, so you have two separate owners as opposed to them being, would it be treated like a condominium if they're on the same lot?
Probably, yeah. And that goes back to this picture, because when you think about those goals of home ownership, you know, again, nothing's going to be a determinant, but this at least gives you a better opportunity in the sense of our traditional idea that homeowners are single-family home, single lot. This is one lot, one home, and that's what we found out, I think it was like a month or two ago at the Bullfont application, was their real desire, that they had started their application off with the one lot and two family dwellings on it, but this is where was their intent.
I lived in a house like this in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So all these would, theoretically, you have to have off-street parking for them, so they all theoretically would have to be served by an alley, correct? Because you can't get a driveway to the side of this.
No, you can. So the driveway is it's not a driveway setback. It's a
Okay.
building setback. So you can have a driveway within a side yard setback.
Okay.
You could choose to make the lot 40 or 42 feet wide and
Yep.
Allow
make
for the
it
driveway.
25 foot and have 15 or 17 feet. And
Yeah,
this is just the minimum.
correct.
Other comments? Okay.
So again, the difference between R3 and R4, so this will be the same for R3 and R4.
Yeah. As consistent with how we do single-family homes would be the same, and two-family. And I know in our discussions about the zoning ordinance update in our residential districts are to look at districts like this that are very similar and look into consolidation. But since we're not at that point where we're opening up the entire kind of residential code, you know, we're looking at this question in an isolated way to a certain extent and trying to follow the same path as we have been. It looks like at least how the regulations are set up and compatibility between the two.
So your box on that chart,
Yeah.
under single family, the R3 would be the same as R4 with the 37.5 and 60?
Yeah, so this box that says right here, if you start at the top, this would look the same over here.
Okay,
And then the other change would be this box right here
That's what I'm
would look
talking-
the same as that box right there.
okay.
And those are the only two changes that we're
Okay.
looking at.
I'm trying to visual, okay.
Sure.
This is a vastly superior house type to the two-family dwelling or what.
Sure.
in
Yeah, I
in
think it
lots of
meets-
ways.
I think it meets our
Yep.
goal, a lot of our goals.
Yep.
Would the townhouse in R4 would require 1 acre, but we wouldn't require 1 acre in R3?
Yeah, we're not getting into the,
Okay.
any type of recommendation on townhomes in R3.
And that 1 acre is for all 6 units.
Okay,
Yeah, so that kind of establishes
there's the difference.
your townhome development. And so that's what we're talking about today, because you can see there's some missing pieces in R4 on like how that actually works, because townhomes are going to be next to each other, and we
Right.
have some. So instead of like jumping to that interpretation with R3 as we were looking at and trying to learn from the two, today this just puts it in writing. This is what it is, and it really helps us to administer the code.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready for a motion? Further discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Sure, I move we approve ORD 2016-07.
Nancy?
Mr. Selden?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Stevens?
Aye.
Ms. Jewell?
Aye.
All ayes.
Motion carries.
Just keep missing